recording. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my lovely sisters. This is Coach Rockshonara hosting today's Sister Seeking Salam session. And we were focusing on mothering in March this week and next week. And I wanted today to talk about mumming our moms. This is a topic that often doesn't get openly discussed unless it's on a very positive way, or you hear about it in terms of, oh yes, there's so much rewards in taking care of our moms or just being there for them. And there is, alhamdulillah, there's so much blessing in it. But let's look at all aspects of it and what it entails, and what it entails for us, what it entails for you, and what, even before that, before you are put in that position, what you think it might be like, or what you think it ought to be like. I just want to talk about it in detail today. So now that I've let several people in, I'm gonna go ahead with it. And if my laptop lets me, there you go. We all know that we have a duty to our mothers, and it is said in the Quran in different places, in Surah Luqman, and even in Surah Isra. And I'll quote from Surah Isra, chapter 17. And your Lord has decreed that you worship none but him, and that you be dutiful to your parents. If one of them or both of them attain old age in your life, say not to them a word of disrespect, nor shout at them, but address them in terms of honor. And this is really key. I know, and I'm going to talk in terms of mothers today, but this applies to both parents. This is very important. We talk when our parents are elderly, we talk about them, with them with honor and respect. It is very important for them, especially in old age, that they get treated with respect. But what does that mean in reality? And we will address that question soon. But I wanted to ask, what does this mean for you? And please pop up your suggestions or ideas in the chat room, whether you are looking after an elderly parent now, or whether it's one of those things that you think you'll do in your later life. What does it mean for you? What do you envision it to be like? Feel free to put it in the chat room. Alaikum salam. Anybody? While you guys are typing, I'll say what I thought it would be like when I was younger. When I was quite young, I was in my 20s when my mom got quite unwell, and I looked after her. But before I got put in that position, I remember thinking, yeah, of course, it's my duty to look after my mom, and I will. She's sacrificed a lot for me, and I never actually envisioned. I never really gave a lot of thought to any of the challenges. I just thought, yeah, you do it. This is instinctive. There's so much beauty in it. There's so much reward in it. Of course, I'm going to enjoy it. Of course, I'm going to like doing this, and there's going to be so much reward in it. I'm going to engage in being with my mom, and I quite a lot for me was I just really just saw the positives. And why not? Why wouldn't we? We grow up thinking, we've looked after our moms have looked after us, and we will look after them. That's Allah asks that of us, and we'll earn our akhirah in doing that. Anybody want to say something?
Rockshonara, sorry, I just want to quickly say, can you make Fahmida co-host as well, please?
Yes, I have just now. I just saw your message. Sorry. Yeah. So what Sister Frida is saying, respond when they are speaking. Yeah. When parents get elderly, it's very easy. I'm now in my 40s raising kids, and I live with elderly in-laws. It's very easy to get caught up in your parenting or your life and just expect them to get on with things or just be there in the background. And yeah, responding to them when they are speaking, not just ignoring them, because that again is respect. It's again as Allah decreed for us to treat them with humility. But there are also challenges that come with it, right? And sometimes we can, in our deen and in our culture too, there's a very rose-tinted view of looking after parents that's spoken about. And there's nothing, I'm not invalidating it at all in any way, because yeah, there is truth in looking after your parents and giving you, it have so much blessing to it. It teaches you so much. But what are the challenges of it? And that's where I wanted to, I'm going to go into a few of them, but I wanted to talk to you about my reality of looking after my mom. And I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything in the chat room. Please feel free to use the chat box to message anything that comes up for you. So for me, unlike some people who were, married with kids and the parents got elderly and had to, juggle a lot of things, I was actually quite young. I was working, I was in my 20s, and I had older siblings, but again, like I was the only girl. And my brothers, they had, with the exception of one, they all had families, kids, bills to pay. And it made sense for me to be my mom's primary carer. Practically, I did try to manage my job and look after it. It didn't work, so I gave up my job in the city. And believe it or not, for me, it was actually quite difficult because I'd done a law degree and I used to work in the city and I'd worked really hard towards it. But I did it for my mom. I think, yeah, of course I'm going to do this for my mom. Going back to what I believed before, I'll do whatever I can for my mom. And this is your mom. And I had aunties telling me, you're earning your akhirah. Just my mom was very unwell, suddenly got very unwell. And initially, yeah, it went fine. But then the reality hit and it was like, well, what do I do now? What is my purpose? Because my purpose had a lot to do with my education and my studies and my work. And suddenly it was looking after my mom wasn't always easy. It was sometimes the mundane with, it's boring sometimes. And then sometimes she would be difficult. She wouldn't do what I wanted her to do. And it's like when the topic of this conversation is mumming our moms. When our parents, our children, for example, those of us who are moms, our children don't always do everything we want them to do. Aspects of our parenting isn't always fun like we anticipated it would be. And I didn't always respond to mom in the kind, honorable, respectful way that I always thought I would. I always gave her respect, and I was like, whoa, and then with that came a lot of guilt. And many sisters do feel that because they don't want to treat their mom in a certain way, but they have to manage their own emotions, their own expectations around how they perceive their mom would behave. Sometimes you're like, well, mom, you should know better. Don't do that. Why are you saying these? Sometimes even adults, even us as adults, we have adult tantrums, but our mothers in old age, because they're in a lot of pain, because sometimes their mental faculties is not quite as it was before. Sometimes they themselves are transitioning into a different stage of their parenting, and it's really hard for them to give up their independence. But I didn't realize that you don't stop being a good Muslim because you didn't do everything your mom wanted you to do. And that you don't stop being a good Muslim because you're struggling. I had a lot of guilt, and I know a lot of sisters have a lot of guilt, and that leads to shame around not always liking every aspect of taking care of our parents. So I wonder if this resonates with any of you sisters.
Can I just say, Rockshonara, I totally understand this, because it's like you say, when your parents, they're not necessarily listening to you, what tends to
Mm.
happen is when with our children, what do? We sometimes resort to yelling at them to get our own way. It's like, sometimes because we're time restricted, but I think there's so much guilt associated with it. If you lose your cool for a second, if you
Yeah.
just be human for a second and you lose your cool with your parents, and it's almost as if like you define, the way you're looking after them by just these little mistakes that you make. I mean,
Yeah, you
you
don't
can't
see,
teach them
you
to
do 10 things
yeah,
that are positive,
yeah,
but it's
exactly. And
brushed by, it's tainted by the one time that you lost your cool, or or you didn't give that due respect.
yeah,
And I'm not
exactly.
saying, I'm not condoning disrespect towards
No,
parents in any shape
absolutely
or
not.
form.
Yeah,
Yeah, but just the
that's
fact that
what
this
it's
is you being
difficult.
human.
Yeah, and I find that, how people say when in their old age, their parents become children, and it's like, but when you're already struggling to parent your child anyway,
Yeah.
and then you know what I mean? It's like another extra learning curve thrown into the mix.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's a lot of it is learning, but it's also managing our thoughts and managing our parents' expectations. We have expectations of our parents, they have expectations of us. As far as I mean, I don't know about you. As far as a lot of parents are concerned, is you owe me respect. And
yeah,
sometimes they're not like, I used to struggle with my mom, like with Ramadan around the corner. My mom's doctor specifically told her not to fast. Islamically, health wise, she didn't need to. We got the local imam to have a chat with her, but she would still fast sometimes. She wouldn't like do things the way I want, so then just you'd be lead to frustration because she would get more ill. I mean, it took us a while for her to come around to it and accept it. There are times that certain things, like I said, I gave up. Like from my childhood, I had always like mapped out my life, like in terms of I'm going to go study this, I'm going to do this level, do this degree, and I went to a prestigious law school, and then was working in the city, and I had a training contract around the corner, yeah, and I, I gave that up, and I didn't. I mean, it wasn't easy, but I did it because it's for my mom. And then there would be moments where I'd help her and I'd go out of my way and I'd be helping her and like jump and do this. And she would get annoyed with me, like, I can do it. Why are you doing it? And I'm like thinking, and I hated myself for thinking it after. I was thinking, I gave up all that for you and you're shouting at me. I mean, I was in my 20s. I didn't have the wisdom that I do now. And I realized now that she was transitioning into actually needing me. Like she was having to give up her independence because she lost some of her mobility because she had a stroke and some heart problems. And it was like, I know my mom loved me, but in those moments it was very difficult to show that love to my mom. And then I would feel guilty for even thinking that. And then the shame that would come with that. And then that would tarnish any good experience I would have with her sometimes. I'd have friends saying to me, auntie saying to me, my best friend, she'd say to me, doing an amazing thing, give up your dreams to take care of your mom, you're earning your akhirah. But I could never enjoy that compliment, or I could never, enjoy words of affirmation towards me like that, because I'd be like, I'm such a fake because I don't really like it sometimes. Thinking I'm such a bad daughter because I had those thoughts, not taking into consideration that I have so many other thoughts that are positive towards my mom, so many experiences of having, being positive towards my mom. And just, I don't know about you, Mary, or anybody else, uh, just having these thoughts like really overshadowing.
I completely hear you, Rockstar, because
Yeah,
you know what it is we always bring to the forefront of mind the bad we did for them, and
yeah.
not the good. And this is a trap of Shaitan, where he's trying to make us so much more despair that we can't even bring a good, jolly energy to them.
Yeah, because our mothers feel it as well. Because sometimes I'd get
Mm.
frustrated. I mean, I know she got frustrated with me as well. To be honest, it was an adjustment for both of us. Like I said, I had lived a certain life mapped out for me, organized, and it was trying to organize myself. And this is me, born and brought up in this country, like trying to run a house in my 20s when I had always had everything done, like pretty much done for me. Maybe supported my mom here and there. Now I became the lady of the house, so to speak, without like that wasn't on my life plan, so to speak, and and then she's getting frustrated because I'm not cooking or running the house the way she's accustomed to have had run it, because I'm suddenly like rearranging my life, working around, because I'm also not just running the house, but I'm also taking her to the hospital appointments, seeing to her needs, if necessary, waking up at nights, and this is me who's like not had kids or anything like that, But then there's also resentment, because I'm just thinking, well, I gave up so much, where's everybody else? But my brothers, and I get with this, with my sibling now, especially now as a parent myself, or with the family and everything on my own, I get why they felt it was okay to just leave me to it, because they had bills to pay, they had jobs, they got wives, kids, but it wasn't always easy to look at that with the lens of that wisdom, and I can look back on it and appreciate that my brothers had their reasons for doing certain things. But the guilt and the shame that came with it tarnished other aspects of my relationship. And then there's also parents' expectations of us. Our mothers sometimes expect us just to do what they want, but sometimes they're not doing what's in alignment to our deen. Sometimes they're not doing what's in their best interest. But because there's this feeling that, well, I'm your mother, and you have to, Allah said you have to respect me, it can be quite difficult to manage that. And for me now, if I were in that situation now, managing my own children, my kid, my household, it wouldn't always be easy, and it's really hard, because sometimes they interfere in your parenting with the best of intentions, and this, but in that moment it can be very difficult to manage your emotions. Like, that's what I'm talking about, serving our parents and managing other responsibilities, because you've got to serve your parents, but it's also, Allah made you the shepherd of your flock. Allah made you a wife. So you have responsibilities and duties to other people. Managing that can bring up a lot of challenges. And then that can create resentment. And then sometimes, you end up not responding to your mother with respect or humility. And that reality can be very challenging. And whilst I didn't have that, I've come across many sisters who've struggled with it. And even having lived with elderly in-laws, but it's like, the best of intentions, they come up to support, they've raised kids of their own. So they feel they know how to raise kids. So they're trying to help you with your child, but it's not the advice you need in that moment. And like Ali Radhalan, who said, we raise our children for our time. So they raised us for that time. And what worked for them might not work for us as with our children. But what we need to do in that situation is maintain our cool, manage our emotions, and then raise our children, but at the same time show respect to our parents. But that's a tall order, and sometimes you're going to fall short. And like you would say as well, Meru, it's okay. I just want today to be a lot about just being aware of the fact that being human and not expecting perfection from you or your parents, it's okay. And even if your parents expect perfection from you, that you don't have to accept it. Again, Meru, like, I'm sure you'll agree that there are moments our hearts will turn. Like Sister Maya said, it can be very get depressing at times. It is a blessing, but it's just so true. Sometimes there were days where I was like, oh, what am I doing with my life? My friends are qualifying, they're living their life in London, they're doing this, they're doing that, and what am I doing with my life? And not appreciating the blessing. It's very hard, and it's okay. I'm here to say it's okay to not see it in the moment, because we get caught up in the thinking, but let's not get stuck there. And let's talk about the fact that there are challenges. Sometimes our moms will have adult tantrums.
I love what you said about the fact that they need to adjust to being needy of us. I think that's the initial kind of like the wrestle between that. It's like they can't accept that someone younger than them is having to look
Someone
after them.
they raised, oh my God, someone, like I remember, I don't know if it was mom who said it to me or one of my siblings. She's like, she was blood. My mom was, I changed your nappies, I fed you, I did this, and you're telling me this? Like, I know better than you, but no, mom, the doctor said X, Y, and Z. What does that doctor know? He's got a degree and he's got, he knows, mom, this is not good for your heart. We're trying to talk to her and she's like, no, she knows better. So do you know, if you think parenting your child who's having a 2-year-old child having a tantrum and managing your emotions and trying to get them to listen to you is hard, parenting an adult who's doing the same thing, more or less, in their own way, and then demanding respect from you because they're your mother, because you're mumming them in that moment. Your roles are reversed. That's a challenge and a half. But what I would add here is that is partly why we're earning our akhirah. the striving in that will earn akhirah. But in that moment, when you have moments of, I really don't like this, it's okay. In the same way, we won't love every aspect of parenting our children. We won't love every aspect of parenting our parents, momming our moms. And it's okay. There's no dishonor in that. But that's why it's very important to prioritize yourselves. You can't always make your mom happy. You're not put in this world to make your mom happy all the time. That's why if you have other siblings, try and share the responsibilities. That's why bring a lie into the equation and find the mercy. Because when you can't find the love sometimes, when you can't love that their behavior in that moment, you can tap into your mercy. And how you tap into your mercy is bring a lie in the situation. How you bring a lie into the situation is ask, is this pleasing to, is what I'm doing pleasing to Allah? Because you might want to shout at your mom. It's very tempting. You might want to, you get so frustrated. You're doing this for their benefit. You're taking your time out from parenting your kids, your husband, you've maybe given up a job, you're caring for them, and they're not listening to you. They should know better. And that judgment, they feel it. But that patience, if you can tap into your mercy, it will help you respond to them with compassion. And what you clocked onto about what I'm saying about, they're adjusting to this. Every stage of parenting, from when we breastfeed our child to when they're a toddler to when they go off to school, or when they're going off to university or first job, get married, have kids of their own, every stage of that, our parenting changes, right? And then it's when they get to that stage, how we are a child to them changes, and how they parent us changes, but they have to adjust to it in the same way we have to adjust. And if we can tap into our mercy in that moment, our relationship with them will benefit from that, like, tremendously. And this is something that I had to work hard at, and being aware of it, and I'm still am, because I don't have both my parents, but I still have my in-laws, and they're the only people that I call mom and dad right now. So for me, I'm still going through it in a slightly different way. But when you can tap into the mercy and find the humility, and they deserve it. Allah commanded us that we give them that. So unless they're asking you to do something sinful, you give them that respect and humility. And it can be very difficult to do that, tap into that when these challenging situations are coming forward. But today I'm here to tell you that, yeah, it's okay. These things happen. It's not rosy, all things rosy. It's not, oh, you're going to do it perfectly. Nobody does it perfectly. And you're going to have some thoughts of shame, some guilty, some thoughts of not liking it, and you will feel guilty. And it's okay, because that just makes you human. Do you understand? Does that resonate with you, sisters?
That really resonated with me, Rokshanara. As you know, it is very challenging, and when you're being constantly reminded that Jannah is at your mother's feet, that you're constantly being reminded that you can't even say oof to them, all of these things, then you suddenly catch yourself. And the thing is sometimes society and culturally it's been ingrained in you, never disappoint your parents, so the expectation is so high. But once you understand that another person's well-being is not in your hands, that reaching them back to Allah is how to, and the best way that you can do that is, like, I love what you said about the mercy, because the thing is part of our iman is to living with the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his name Ar-Rahman is call upon that name. Ask him to put mercy in your heart for your parents when you're struggling, in those moments when you're struggling, reach out to him from his name Ar-Rahman and ask him to make that mercy in your heart.
And that dua, Rabbirhamhuma kama, that dua that we read for our parents all the time, we're seeking Allah's mercy for our parents. But we also have to embody that in our treatment of them. And as challenging as it can be, and I'm here to talk about that and say, yeah, it is. Allah wouldn't put you in this situation. This is your journey. Allah's put you here because Allah knew you could treat your mom with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love
Allah is just, he wouldn't put you in a situation where you can't cope. But sometimes that might mean you don't take on every single responsibility. Sometimes that might mean you liaise with your siblings and share some of that. It could be like, for example, with me, I did bulk of it, but sometimes my brothers did need to step in. Do you understand what I mean? Because I needed to take a break. You do, like with parenting, we talk about self-care. You take a break from your kids to come back to be a better parent. In the same way, you take a break from mumming your mom to come back to be a better better child to your mom in their old age. And it doesn't mean that you've neglected them. Even if they say, sometimes our parents, they struggle with it because they want things done their way, in the way children do, and because they did things certain way for their parents, But even if they say it, you don't have to accept it. And sometimes our parents can, in pain, in hurt, or just because they don't understand, can say things because they're losing their independence. So they're feeling like they're losing their control. And in order to maintain some of the control, they try to control you. But you and I know that they can't control us unless we let them. Do you understand? They have no control, power over us to control. But they will talk to you with such, strength, and demand your obedience in a certain way that you feel you can't say no, because society tells you can't say no to your parents. Society tells you can't displease your parents because Allah's pleasure is in your parents' pleasure. But there's a caveat there. But before we get there, if we can't tap into your mercy and compassion, the way to do that is trying to understand it from their point of view. And that's why I mentioned about the fact that it's really important to realize that your parents are adjusting. Every aspect of our life, every stage of parenting is an adjustment. And this is an adjustment for them, needing you, wanting you. And then, like when I realized this as well, because I live with elderly, it's that they want to feel needed. In this day and age of technology, of this, people, grandkids are gaming, they want you to give them that time. They want to feel needed. And when they don't feel needed, that sometimes is the root of why they behave in a certain way. When you find what the need are, you can address it. You can give them a bit of time. You can say, oh, I understand that. That's frustrating. I understand, Mom, that's frustrating. And you give them that validation. That sometimes is all they need. In the same way, our children sometimes just need us to be their sounding board. They have certain needs, but if those needs aren't being met, they're going to react in a certain way. And that's with our mothers as well. And when you can tap into that, you can tap into your mercy and compassion. So when you're angry with your mother, when you're frustrated with your mother, she will feel it. Even if you don't shout at her or say oof to her, they can sense it. There's an energy. You're judging her and she senses that judgment. And that will distance you from them. But if you can tap into your mercy by understanding well through their eyes, you build that connection, and through that connection, inshallah, she will listen to you. Inshallah, you will attain Jannah. Inshallah, you will do what is pleasing to Allah. Because it's so easy, and I've fallen into it myself. I talk from experience, where we get frustrated and we do something that is not pleasing to Allah, even though we might be justified in being frustrated. It used to drive me up the wall. My mum would just take so long in doing certain things that I know I could, if she let me do it, I'd do it faster. It would be safer. And I'm like hovering over her, hopefully she won't, burn herself or something. You don't understand what I mean? But it's just, when I took a step back and realized she's really struggling to let go of her independence. So I just did what I can to make it easier for her to do it on her own. Like, she'd want to cook and I'd prep it all, but she'd feel like she cooked it. Do you understand? Like, little things. I'm just giving you just examples of my own experience. It could be different things for you. And then when you can see why they're doing something, because they're struggling in some way, it's easier, like I said, is to tap into your mercy. Instead of thinking they should leave me alone to do things my way, you approach it differently. Your energy is different because you approach it with compassion. In that understanding them, you can come from a place of mercy, in the way that you engage with them and respond to them will be respectful. And that's what Allah commands us. And there's no disdain. But we are still being obedient to our parents with respect. sometimes they will want something from us and we can't give it to them. And that's okay, because is it still pleasing to Allah? And when it is pleasing to Allah, as long as they're not asking something of us that's when it's pleasing to Allah, in looking after, when our parents want something that's taking very time consuming for us, but we need to go see to our kids, you're still doing your duty to your kids by by looking after them, but also respectfully saying no to them. And even if your mom feels like, oh gosh, she said no to me, how dare she say no to me? You're not in the wrong. It's okay. And it's okay to have these thoughts, have these struggles. But going back to the duty, this is another one that I feel sometimes I wanted to bring this up because this is something that's been said to me. I've had people, my clients and friends brought this up as well. Abdullah ibn Amr reported, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, the pleasure of the Lord is in the pleasure of the parents, and the displeasure of the Lord is in the displeasure of the parents. And this is very key, so important. That's why Allah's given them such status. That's why Jannah lies at our mother's feet. We want to keep them happy. But like I was saying, sometimes if doing everything they want takes you away from your other duties, sometimes it's okay to say no, respectfully. Everything in Islam is about balance. And there are exceptions to the general command of obedience. In every circumstances, it is not permissible to obey one's parents if they command us to do something sinful. Now, you might think, okay, so how is that sinful if your mother asks you to cook every meal freshly, or if your mother is very, very demanding? But if in obeying her, it's taking you away from your children to the point that you're almost neglecting them or not parenting them in the best way. It's taking you away from your responsibility with your husband in other respects. It's taking you away from salah. I know sisters who the salah has they skipped because they need to do X, Y, and Z for their mom. In the same way, sometimes parents skip certain things because they need to take their son or daughter to some club or something. I'm just giving an example. But that's sinful, sis. You have other duties, you need to be able to balance it and manage it. But often, and not often, but there are times where you will hear, your siblings say to you, if mom's upset with you, then Allah's upset with you. Your parents might say to you, may Allah forgive them, because in that moment, they're so angry, so frustrated, they're not getting their way, just like a 2-year-old having a tantrum because they're not getting their way, and they deal with it by screaming. Our parents might just say, well, I'm not happy with you, and and they bring this up, and the displeasure of parent is so the displeasure of Lord is in the displeasure of the parents. This comes up, and I want to bring this up because there's a context. I understand parents can be happy but unhappy in these situations. It's really important to talk about it because just you have to realize that this, and when we receive something like that from a parent that we love and adore and look up to, it can be really, really, really painful to hear. It can lead to a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And number one, I'd say to you this is that you don't have to accept it. Number two, realize that your parents are not they're just angry. A lot of people say things that they don't mean when they're in anger. In the same way, like, for example, a parent, when they get angry and they smack the child, you will get an immediate obedience from the child to be quiet. But that's not what you want. You don't want your child to fear you into doing what you want them to do. You want them to do it because they want to do it, and it's what's pleasing to Allah. Sometimes our parents get so caught up in the situation. Saying something like that might make you do what they want you to do. It's like that slap, right? But you don't have to accept it. You don't have to believe it either. And it's important to realize that they're just not in control of the emotions in that moment, or make excuses for them, because Allah gave you that caveat, because Allah doesn't demand blind obedience from you. We think serving our mother, we serve our mother to serve Allah. Yes, there's truth in that, but we are obliged to obey our parents. But like I said, there is a caveat. You don't do something that is sinful. And using word, hadiths or words from the Quran out of context can be very harmful, and it has been used. I've heard this so many times. This ayah of displeasure of your Lord is in the displeasure of your parents. Sometimes paraphrased. But we forget that there is always context to this. Allah, our deen is about balance. Our parents don't own us in the same way we don't own our children. And that discomfort that you feel when not obeying leads to your mother being upset with you, it's really uncomfortable. But ultimately, it goes back to how do you bring this in alignment to the Quran and Sunnah? You bring Allah into it, but how do you do it? How do you obey your parents? And how do you find the pleasure of your mother in that situation where she's so angry with you because you didn't do as she wanted you to do? It could be something major, but you feel strongly about this. The question you ask yourself is, but what will Allah say about this? When I go to Allah on the day of judgment in front of Allah, what will Allah say to me? Would Allah be displeased with me? Because you will find the reality is sometimes pleasing Allah is easier than pleasing our parents. Because you know what? They're human. That's just the truth. The reality is, and we know this, creation lets us down. And sadly, sometimes even our mothers. They make mistakes. We forget this. We make mistakes as mothers. They make mistakes too. So sometimes they will say something that they really shouldn't have. But does that mean you have to accept it? No. You can reject. The pain that you feel when somebody says something hurtful to you, you feel it because you believe it. The hurt comes from you believing their words. So you make a judgment call, choose to reject something that is hurtful. Even from your mother. Yes, I'm saying it. It's even from your mother, the person you are told to obey. Because ultimately, before your mom comes Allah, and if Allah on the day of judgment is not going to judge you, is not going to judge you for in that moment not pleasing your mom because you had other responsibilities, then so be it. You will not always be able to please your mom. You just do your best, and it's in that striving, even in making the mistakes, that you earn your akhirah. Even your mother, in her being humanness, when she makes those mistakes, if she turns back to Allah, she will earn the akhirah. But if you get stuck in the thought that, oh my gosh, my mom is displeased with me, or what am I going to do? You can't move forward. You have to bring Allah into it. And in those moments, you can do the flip side where you get so angry with your mom that how dare she speak to me? I gave up everything for her. I'm giving up time with my kids for her. I'm giving up my career for her. Whatever it is that's going through your head. It can be really hard to tap into the love in that moment. But that's why mercy is so important in any relationship, in our relationship with our children, but so much so in our relationship with our mother, especially elderly mothers. So you tap into your mercy when you can't find the love. And you say to Allah, I'm putting in the effort for your sake. Even though I can't see the reward, even though my mom doesn't appreciate what I'm doing in that moment. Even though my siblings are telling me I'm messing up, that they would do a better job if they were, but they've got a commitment so they can't. You're not getting the appreciation in the dunya, but your rewards lies in akhirah. There's no such thing as blind obedience in our dunya, in our deen, sorry. And I feel really passionate about this because in our faith, in our culture, there is a lot of you must do as your parents say. And parents, sometimes they did it for their parents. And so then now it's their turn. They feel like they have to do that. They can command that from you. But you have the choice to accept or reject the assertions, and you have a choice to bring a line to it, and find the mercy in that and move on. Because balance is what is important in any relationship. Our deen is all about the balance. You can have the one extreme of doing everything for your mother. You can have the other extreme of just neglecting her because, oh, she should know better. She's treating me badly, so why should I? Truth about momming our moms, there's truth about raising, looking after our elderly parents, is that it's not rose, it's not walk in the park. Because let's be honest, we're in dunya. We want the best wish with our mothers. Most of them carried us. They raised us. They had sleepless nights. They gave up so much for us. And we want to give them. I mean, I was talking to a client earlier, and subhanallah, I think there's 4 siblings, and their mum is elderly, and she raised them all on her own. But between 4 siblings, they're struggling to look after her. Look at that. That's the reality of it. And, she deserves the honor. But the reality of it isn't always that easy. The reality of it isn't a walk in the park. We want the best relationship with our mother. We want to always do right by them, and we want them to understand when we are doing something that they don't like us to do. But that is actually us wanting a Jannah relationship. We'll get that in Jannah with our mothers. But in the dunya, we have shaitan's waswas, we have cultural implications. Sorry, what's the phrase? We have culture, playing a part in it. We have our own negative thoughts. There's all sorts of things at play. And shaitan, because you're generalized at your mother's feet, shaitan will work harder in this relationship to create a divide between you and your mother. So it's that much more important that you strive harder to find the mercy and realize that it's okay that you have these bad days or bad thoughts. Realize that there's no shame in not enjoying every aspect of this, even though you thought back in the days that, yeah, you would, because she's your mom, you'd do anything for her. Yes, what was it? Who was it that said disobedience can feel like, it feels uncomfortable because you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be upset, but that's not true, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful, and we as humans are sinful and make mistakes, but make tawbah. Sorry, I'm trying to read this, I can't read the whole thing. Make tawbah and saying sorry. Disobedience can feel like failure, which is daunting. That's true. And here I'm going to say this, and I say this every chance I get. There's no such thing as failure in our deen. The only 2 ways you can fail in our deen is when we take shaitan as our leader and when we don't plan for our akhirah. So if we, even with the hardships and the difficulties and the challenges, if we still carry on looking after our moms, are we taking shaitan as our leader? No. He might whisper, he might put waswas there, but your Jannah is still under your mother's feet. And in striving to look after your mom, despite the challenges, despite the negative thoughts, despite whatever's coming from outside people or even from your own mother, you're still earning your akhirah, because Allah sees what's in your heart. Allah sees that you're trying. Allah sees that your heart turned back is come back again. And Allah sees that you're doing that. You're doing that for Him. Even if you don't see the pleasure of it in this world, the appreciation in this world, you're doing it regardless. Can you imagine what palaces await for you? Yes, what a beautiful striving. It is beautiful, but it comes with challenges. And I really hope today, from what I've said and what Coach Mary has said, and then on some of the comments, you can see that you don't need to feel guilty for not enjoying every aspect. That shame It doesn't need to be that. That shame makes you feel small, and it taints the other aspects, the positive aspects of your relationship with your mother. I hope you realize that in me sharing my experience and Mary sharing hers and the comments from the chat, that you can see that you're not alone in feeling this way. In our deen, we talk so much about our mothers and the excuse me, the high status that they hold, and rightly so. But there's this other side to it, the reality of it, that we need to be aware of, so that shaitan can't, lead you astray, that those thoughts don't make us stuck. Because when it feels too much or too difficult, it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes the difficulties are like an alarm system to tell you that, okay, maybe you've taken on too much on your plate. And I don't mean taking on looking after your mom as being too much, because Allah is just. Allah would not put you in this situation if He didn't feel you could cope. But Islam commands us to find balance in our responsibilities. So how do you find balance in all of this? Sometimes your mom won't be happy. Sometimes you won't be able to do everything your mom wants exactly the way she wants it. But so long as you're not displeasing Allah, and so long as you're still maintaining your, you obey her as long as you can maintain your other responsibilities. But yeah, you still got to say to your children, you still, not just your husband, you've got to look after your own mental and physical health. I know I have clients who always put themselves last and they can't understand why they're struggling and they're so tired. It's very giving. You're very giving of yourself, but you also give to yourself. You can't pour from an empty pot. You can't give to your mom unless you're looking after yourself as well. Even your salah suffers because you're just so exhausted. So if you have siblings, share the responsibility. It can be very difficult, especially when they think like, oh, you're living with her, or you're close to her, or you're the daughter, or whatever it is that's the thing. It can be very hard to have those difficult conversations, but without those difficult conversations, you're essentially committing a sin against yourself. Your body is an amana that you need to look after. Your children have rights of you, as does your husband. So have those difficult conversations with your siblings and say, look, you know what? I'm happy to take on board majority of it, but can you come and stay with mom for this weekend? Or can you take mom for once a month for a weekend? And keep your mom on board. These are just suggestions, anything, just so that you can not have to worry about, have I given mom's medication, or no, how can I go out without taking my mom? But if I take my mom, I can't take my kids to this place. All those practical logistical things that you have to think about when you're going out with children as well as there's elderly. Have those difficult conversations. And like I said before, realize that creation will let you down, even your mothers. But that makes them human. Don't judge them for it. Just accept that they're just human. And realize that Allah will never let you down. He is most just. Yeah. And don't let these challenges block you from going forward or being present. Because those of you who have heard my stories about talking about my mom, you will hear some of the most beautiful stories, some of the most beautiful du'as my mom's made for me. Some of the most, like, when I think back, because I lost my mom 10 years ago. So my memories of the time when I looked after my mom are what keep me going until I meet her again in Jannah, inshallah. Because there was a time, like I said, I gave up a legal career, I gave up all of that to take care of my mom. And I did, if I'm honest, sometimes think, what if I didn't do that? And I maintained a legal career, I'd be qualified solicitor, I would do this, I would X, Y, and Z. Look at my friends who pursued it. And sometimes that can get you down, and that can bring it with it its own insecurities. But look at, look at it this way. I had planned, but Allah had His plan. And in looking after my mom, it took me away from my legal career. It meant my mom wanted me to get married at one point, and I did get married. I had kids, and life, that took over. And where am I now? I mean, I'm cutting a long story short, but where am I now? I'm a coach. who talks about the Quran and Sunnah every single day she works. You couldn't pay me £1 million to go back to law. I love what I do. But in taking care, the route to taking care of my mom, the challenges in facing looking after my mom, all of that was a big part in bringing me here. And I wouldn't, even the struggles that I had, I wouldn't change it, because those trials are what brought me closer to Allah. So don't let these challenges block you from moving forward or being present, because you can move forward. You can enjoy those moments, have those memories. Don't taint those good memories with the guilt and the shame that you feel because there are times when you are struggling. That's what Shaitan wants. Don't let Shaitan win. Don't let Shaitan rob you of attaining Jannah. Because when you feel shame, when you feel bad, it slows you down. On one end, there's the two extremes. You judge your mom for being a certain way, and that breaks connection. You judge yourself for not being a perfect daughter. That breaks connection too. So don't rob yourself of attaining your Jannah. Your Jannah is there. Is there. You're serving your mother to attain Jannah. You will have these challenges. Accept it as part of life. The value of what you're doing for your mom is just so high. I don't think we can fully, truly understand it. But if you get caught up in your thinking about, oh my God, how could I feel this way? Oh my gosh, I didn't do it right. Oh my God, why is my mom doing that? And if you get too caught up in your thinking, you won't see the value. You won't appreciate it. You won't be present. And when you can take away the guilt and accept that, okay, fine, sometimes I will get it wrong. Sometimes I will make mistakes. Ask yourself how you can find the balance. Find the mercy in your role. With that mercy, when you approach your mother in those challenging moments, with that mercy, when you approach your siblings to help you in those moments, you will find the beauty in it. And this last one has been one of the most difficult lessons that I've had to learn in my interactions with the elders in my life. Learn humility in your interactions. It's so hard to sometimes. Some people are better at it. From my experience, I will tell you, it's really hard to manage your frustrations. Your mother might be behaving like a child, but you still give her that respect and humble yourself in front of her, because she's deserving of it. You don't have to accept her angry assertions about you. Even if she says something, you don't have to accept it. But your interactions, be humble, be respectful. She deserves that. And last but not least, I want to talk about the growth that comes with this relationship, this aspect of our lives. We gain so much from caring for our mothers. The least of all is patience. But there's blessings. Our mothers make dua for us. Every time you cook food for them, their lips, their mouth, their stomach, that will testify in your favor. Every time you look at your mother with love and compassion, you earn yourself a completed Hajj. SubhanAllah, sisters, if I could have my mom back, that's what I feel like I would do that. Obviously, I've talked about the realities and the challenges of it, but there's just so much in it. There's so much blessing in this. Let's not, I'm not talking about the challenges. Let's not undermine all of that. Everything you do for your mom, when you massage her arms, when you comb her hair, every finger will testify in your favor on the day of judgment. We also need to manage our discomfort when it comes to our parents. Sometimes they will do things we don't like. Sometimes they will say things like, oh my God, Mom, why'd you say that for? That's just not right. But we manage it when we engage with them with humility. And in doing so, we earn our akhirah. And it's also for you, it's a learning curve. We have got to learn. We do the work to get ourselves mentally strong so we don't make the same mistakes with our children. So when you see your mom, like you said, Mom, why did you say that? Try and understand it from her point of view. She's struggling because she's struggling to let go of her independence. She's struggling because she feels not needed. Be aware of it yourself. So when you're in her situation, you can approach your children in a way that doesn't create disunity, in a way that doesn't create hurt or shame. You can talk openly to your children about it. You, instead of waiting for your children to decide amongst themselves who's going to look after mom, can say, actually, you know what, I'll stay with you if that's okay with you. Discuss it. Have these discussions, these open discussions, not taboo. And this will benefit all of you. And you can say, I'll stay with her, but on the weekend I'll go to you because she needs a break. You know this because you went through it yourself. So I've covered a lot, and this is a very big topic. And I know many sisters need to go to school runs, but I would love it if some sisters could unmute or give some feedback. Anything, what resonated for you? What was your biggest takeaway? Wa alaikum salam. Sorry, what's your name, sister? Someone can say, I can't see who is it Sister Liz? I can't hear you. Where are you calling in from, sis, and what would you like
That
to
was very, it's Liza from Jersey. We've got lovely weather today, so I'm in school.
Oh, Jersey, wow.
Can you not hear me? From Jersey in the Channel Island.
Broken, but I think it must be the internet. Go on.
Yeah. No, I'm just in the car. That's why it might not be very clear.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi, I'm just using 4G or 3G or whatever. And just to say that it was very powerful what you said, and thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you sharing that. And what you said at the end about, now that I've got 2 children myself, I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, it's good to have these discussions with them early on, and what's going to be at the forefront as well. And I'm not the main carer for my parents because I live far away. My other sister is, so it's made me more compassionate towards her as well. And like you said, to be more merciful, and it's just everything that we know, but it's just highlighted it, everything, and it just made me feel really positive, really inspired. Things that I can share with my husband as well, because he has guilt over his parents as well, because they've left the island and they've relocated. So if we, and I felt, in guilt against that as well, but it's just how the dunya is. It's the qadr of Allah, and you can still mother, you can still parent by giving them du'as and other things.
There's a phone call as well. You can pick up the phone and just give them that. Sometimes it's not always physically you might not be able to be there for your mom, but you can give them the time. So I find my experience of elders is they want your time. Often it is that they want your time and validation that they're still needed and you care about them. Your husband might not physically be able to go visit them, but if he calls them and speaks to them, lets them talk rather than a 2-minute conversation and okay, bye mom, you're okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? And your sister as well, for example, like she might call and she might be having a rough day. Ask her, don't ask her how are you and that's it. Ask her, no, really, how are you? How's it going? And then I hope you understand why she might have some days where she's just really struggling, because the reality of it is not.
And I think what I've taken away from me personally and my personal experience is that fact that people have different skills in this world. So some people, they might be a nurturer, they might be more of a carer, or they might have to step up to that. Other people, they might find the phone calls more emotionally draining, where they might find it physically to sort out the logistics or just financially, not to whatever you're doing, that's for you, and not you could be doing more harm by trying to do more good at the same time.
I'll be honest, I in my 20s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 20s, nurturing didn't come naturally to me. I was the baby of the family. I was nurtured, and suddenly the role reversed because mom got ill, and the expectation was me, because obviously, like I said, my siblings had wives and children and bills to pay, and it made sense. But the reality of it was, oh my gosh, how do I suddenly nurture people when I'm so used to receiving it? And how do I run a household and then look after mom? And I didn't have kids, and I still struggled. But I stepped into it. It took time.
No, you're amazing, sister.
Noise.
Such inspiration. And that was your color. And obtained Jannah. As you were saying, you gave up your career and accomplishing. Now I'm going through some treatment as well. So yeah, I've just like, alhamdulillah, just going through some cancer treatment, but so that's why I can't look after my own parents as much. And my dad's got dementia. Sometimes I do feel, you have that guilt, but
yeah,
I shouldn't, and like nor should my husband, because like obviously our situation's different now,
yeah.
and like sometimes I know it might sound simple, just be on the phone and just to talk, but because you don't want to upset them. And my thing that I can do is do art and just to know that I'm okay.
I think sometimes them knowing that you're thinking about them
in that way,
it's them
and you
knowing.
can look after your parents by giving them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they know that there's a present, so they will send pictures of their grandkids,
yeah,
and stuff like that. But we don't have like long, deep, emotional conversations,
yeah.
and like we're not in present. It's just a fact of life. You're not in each other's
Lives
lives because of the distance as well,
yeah,
and over time. Yeah. And I'm sure like the first generation of immigrants, they had similar things when they couldn't be in contact
yeah.
with their families if they moved
I
away
mean,
from a
this day
different
and age,
country.
we do have Zoom, and
Anyway,
we have, but my parents would be writing letters which they'd receive 2 months later, or like that kind of stuff. It was long. I'm talking about a long time ago. So yeah, we do, make use of those to connect to your parents as much as you can. Allah knows this. Allah knows what you're doing. Allah knows your intention, and don't let, like I said, don't let shaitan rob you of your akhirah. Do what you can, but don't let the guilt and shame taint it. Because sometimes you feel shame and you just think, okay, I'm gonna mess up and want to upset mom, so why do I bother trying? Don't let that get in the way, Okay, thank you, sister.
yeah. Assalamu
Walaikum salam. Somebody else is there will be recording it. There will be a recording. And I will post it when I can. I mean, my kids are at school. I'm going to do school run in a bit, but I'll post it in the next few days, inshallah. And I got another sister saying, I feel like going back and doing it differently, better from what we know now. Well, you know what, sis? I feel like that sometimes. But the truth is, we can't turn back the clock. What we can do is make dua to Allah and say, well, I did what I could when I could, from the best of my knowledge. Now now I know this, and Allah, reward me for my striving, reward me for what I did know. And sisters, if you're like me, you've lost your parents, you are your parents' sadaqah jariyah. You can still do, your du'as will elevate their akhirah. You giving money in charity for them will elevate the akhirah. It's what you can do now. We can't turn back the clock, but we can learn from it. Everything is a learning. There is no such, like sometimes I remember thinking, oh my gosh, did I fail my mom because I didn't do X, Y, and Z? But like I said, there's no such thing as failure. Other than taking shaitan as a leader and not planning your akhirah, but looking after your mom is the exact opposite of all that. I mean, you do what you can now, and you did what you could when it was your time, and that's where we go from. Anybody else want to have a chat? Coach Famida, Coach Meru, anybody else want to unmute themselves? Please feel free.
I just want to say, Rokshan, very quickly that Jazakallah khair for such a big topic, and I think just everything you said resonated so much with me, and I'm sure with a lot of people. And like we said at the beginning, it's not something that a lot of scholars speak about from like a human point of view, or it's strong, and it's people are often in pits of guilt and shame, which are really crippling. So they're still
like I said, I had friends telling me, "Oh, you're doing an amazing job. I can't imagine giving up my studies or my job for this." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, I'm such a fake." I'm nodding along and I'm thinking, "I'm such a fake because I don't always enjoy it." But it's not. It's one doesn't mean that just because you don't enjoy every moment of it doesn't make you a bad daughter, But I couldn't compute that in that moment because I always thought I'm supposed to love my mom in every moment. I'm supposed to do everything right, like these beliefs that we had that just really like crippled us, like you said.
One thing that really resonated for me was, we kind of, especially like me, like I saw my mum serve my granddad, like my dad's parents are her in-laws, and she did it, on top of everything she was doing, and I kind of, made that my standard. So you kind of look at how your moms have been, and you kind of make that your standard. But you know, just as we can't parent our children for a different time, we can't be our parents from a different time. Like we have to move with the time. We have to know that it's like you say, the deen is about balance. And
Yeah,
sometimes people out of, well, they're doing it well-meaning and saying, yeah, you know, but that's not the words we need to hear. Sometimes you
yeah.
just need to. I know it's hard, but you know what? You know, like Allah sees your struggle, and you know,
And they will accept it.
yeah,
Like your parents will accept it. They will come to accept it. But it just, you have to hang in there. And the standard isn't what your mom did or what my mother-in-law did or what my mom did or what your aunt did or your grandmother did. Standard is what does the Quran and Sunnah say,
exactly. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So we do, and the standard is good conduct.
Yeah.
And good conduct isn't blind obedience.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to say to the sisters who have difficult or really, really strained relationships with their parents,
Yeah,
I find out that dua that Allah has given us, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا in Surah Al-Isra. I find that that's really comforting, because knowing that you're still alive because of your mother, in the sense that, you know, she didn't just let you be. And I know there's really strenuous circumstances, and I don't claim to know all of them. But the fact
yeah,
is that Allah chose her as a vessel to bring you into this world. So even if you didn't get love the way you perceived love from a mother, or you didn't get it like other people did, know
yeah.
that she did bring you into this world. And for that in itself, like, you know, just ask for Allah's mercy, using that dua, because even if you don't feel like you love her, even if you don't feel she loved you the right way, you know, Allah has put upon his throne, my mercy prevails over my wrath. So we should always ask for mercy for our parents. And if it doesn't come from us, but still, you know, we hope that our Rahman will accept that. At least we ask for mercy for our parents. And even
Yeah,
if he could do it through us. So that's just what I wanted to say for those who are struggling with their parents, who
yeah,
struggle with strained relationships. So
yeah. I mean, it's difficult. It's easy to say to someone, do it for the sake of Allah. But we don't live their lives. We don't know the reality of what's going on with them. So it's important to talk about it. I mean, this conversation, this session is not going to cover every aspect of mumming our mom, but talk to someone about it. Even if it means reach out to us, that's what we're here for, or talk to someone you trust, a friend, a sibling, because it's important to get it off your chest, not to let it cripple you with those shameful thoughts. Thank you, Mary. Coach Famida, did you want to say anything?
Just Jazakallah khair. Thank you, sister, for that really good topic that you've covered. My own experience is I lost my mum 15 years ago to cancer, and she had that my whole life pretty much growing up. So the first time she was diagnosed, I was just 5. So I grew up seeing her ill, and I very much from a young age had to take on much more than, what, my friends did ever. And but despite that, like, obviously I was a teenager. I was 21 when she passed away. I did my best, but I've carried a lot of guilt. And just listening to you today, it's, kind of helped to see my mum from a human point of view, and see myself, from a human point of view. And obviously, like how I am now, at my age now, obviously, it would be really different. But, that was the time that was ordained for me at that age. And obviously, for my mum. But it's just sometimes, like, when you've grown up seeing a parent ill, you don't know, and I don't have memories of her being healthy. So, I had to really, really step in as that role, and, carry on doing what I was doing, studying and working on all of that. But you just never felt like it was enough. So I think I carried kind of her standard of her expectations from me. But it's nice to talk about it. How you
It's
said,
important
like,
to talk about it.
sisters.
Sometimes it helps you. Think is what I would say is, in our prophet, he said the standard of obedience is good conduct, and that which is lawful, reasonable, and good. So sometimes we take our mom being displeased and the discomfort that create that makes us feel as, oh no, we have not reached a certain standard. But the standards are not set by humans, because humans fall short, even our mothers. And that's one of the hardest things I had to accept, because growing up, my mom could do no wrong. Even when she did wrong, it was really hard for me. And it was something that I'm unraveling even now. I struggle you know, to accept, even though I know she's made mistakes. I know intellectually that my mom has made mistakes because she's human, but this emotion, this side of me, this belief in me that no. And therefore, if she's upset with me, if she was upset with me, like, you know, not living up to her standard or living up to somebody else's standard of how you should treat a mother or a mother figure, it can be quite demoralizing. And that can take away the hope that you know, like, because come on, what you're saying, and my dad was very ill from a young age, so I remember studying for my exams on my dad's hospital bedside. Okay, so I can relate to some of what you're saying. We did what we could, what we knew to be the best thing in that time. How is that not going to earn us our akhirah? But we let it be tainted by a standard, and that standard changes from your mom to my mom to the auntie to whoever. But let's, you know, align it to the Quran and Sunnah. And how is anything of what you describe not good conduct? It's lawful, reasonable, and good.
Yeah, it's when you add all of that waswas and all of other people's opinions that it really brings you down and takes the hope away. And you can carry that, like, you know, I'm in my 30s now, and you know, I've carried it for quite a long time now that, oh, I'm not a good enough daughter. And, you know, there's almost like there's no resolution, because the person that you're having these, you know, these thoughts about, the grief, that there's no one to kind of, there's no closure. That's what I mean. So
because they're gone as well. And sometimes when they're so old, you can't have those conversations with them. But let's have these conversations with our siblings. I remember, I'll be honest, if I could turn back the clock, the thought of going to my siblings and saying, well, I'm not enjoying this, I really don't want to do this, or and not necessarily saying I'm going to stop doing it, but just to be able to find a space where I could say to my siblings, I really don't like this. I can imagine the fear of judgment. I couldn't do it. What? She's your mom. She's our mom. How could you say that? You know, like, I could just imagine, not that they didn't appreciate what I did, but it's just, I just didn't feel we could do that. So let's be that person to our sibling, like the sister who spoke earlier. Just be that phone call away, so your sister can just, like, brain dump on you, like, what's going on. She will still go back to mom because she's closer. And I was never going to leave my mom, but sometimes it was very frustrating, and I just didn't know where to go. I mean, I know now I can go to Salah. You know, I didn't always have the wisdom that I did now, and sometimes we don't. In the moment, shaitan's waswas, our negative thinking, something someone says, our fear of being judged, it all gets in the way. But let's not let shaitan rob us of our akhirah, because, you know, Jannah does lie at our mother's feet.
Yeah, subhanallah. And the more, even though it's in the past, it can still be a form of worship for you, where you reflect on that and you still turn to Allah through those past struggles, but you turn to Allah and you say, Allah, I did my best. That's much better than completely just burying it and just pretending like, you know, it didn't happen and I was a complete failure, so let's not even go there to think about.
We look to Allah with hope. Hope is what, because Allah is as we think of Him. And if Allah is Al-Ghafur Rahim, if we made mistakes, we seek forgiveness. We don't get stuck. We don't get stuck in any mistakes that we may have made. And acknowledge the fact that it was just us being human. Acknowledge the fact that your mom talking to you in anger in that way, it was just her being human. Forgive her. Ask Allah to forgive her and yourself. It's so important for us to have this reflection, because even Allah asks us to reflect or reflect on the Quran, reflect on ourselves. Even preparing for today's session, so much came up for me. As you can probably tell, because I talked about mum a lot. But so much came up from me. But it's important. It's so important to have these discussions, because of the fact that there's such, the ulama and even our families, elders, our communities, they just talk about the positive, which has its place, and there is so much, like I said, there's so much blessing in it, but you need to talk about the realities of it, so we're mentally prepared. I'm, you know, like I said, like that sister said before, that she's got young children and she's going to have this conversation. I really hope we all have these conversations with our children, because it's easier as a mother if we say to our children, okay, so, you know, I'd like to stay with you, or is this going to work for you, or what works for you? Then this children because it's really hard sometimes to have the conversations with our siblings and say, look, I'm not coping, I need you to help. So if the mother comes and says it, it's just that much easier. But it's a pragmatic solution. But if we get too caught up in our guilt, we don't look for the solutions. Okay, sisters, I'm sure most of you have to go back to go to school runs, but thank you so much for your interaction.
It's the sister again.
Okay.
And my young son, Liz, are here again. It's my young son. He's listened to
hi,
it,
Liz.
7 years old.
Roses, you're cutting off. I can't hear you.
Again, and Jazakallah, and I make dua for all of you guys as well. Okay, it's Wi-Fi, but just Jazakallah khair. I look forward to messaging you. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum, inshallah. Yeah, please reach out. Anybody, if something's come up that you couldn't talk about, just please reach out to one of us, or feel free to reach out to me, and we'll see what we can do to help you. But I really do have to go now. I really hope and pray that you benefited from today's session. I'm going to end with a dua. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my beautiful sisters.